In a land of fading glory, where the shadows start to creep, a leader stands before us, his promises we keep. Eyes that once were sharp and cunning, now a vacant stare. But we hold on to his words, no matter how unfair. We follow blindly through the night. In the face of madness, we hold tight. For our fears and hopes will fight. In a cult of loyalty, wrong feels right. Rallies filled with fervor, chants echo in the air. A sea of faces looking up with 1,000-yard stare. He speaks of low-flow toilets and gangsters from the screen, but all we see is a savior to fulfill all American dreams. Follow blindly through the night. In the face of madness, we hold tight. For our fears and hopes will fight. In a cult of loyalty, wrong feels right. They say he's slipping, losing grip, but we don't see the cracks. To us he's still our leader, we'll never turn our backs. A world that's changing frightens us, we cling to his embrace. In his decline we find our strength, in madness find our place. Follow blindly through the night. In the face of madness, we hold tight. For our fears and hopes will fight. In a cult of loyalty, wrong feels right. So here we stand together in the twilight's fading glow, holding on to promises in a world we barely know. The leader's mind may falter, but our faith will never bend. In this cult of devotion, we'll follow till the end. They say he's slipping, losing grip, but we don't see the cracks. To us he's still our leader, we'll never turn our backs. A world that's changing frightens us, we cling to his embrace. In his decline we find our strength, in madness find our place.
Empty eyes. The former president's eyes bore a vacant look, reminiscent of the 1,000-yard stare that haunted the veterans of Vietnam. It was as if humanity itself had been drained from him. Slipping further into dementia, he was no longer the man he once was. Always childish and spoiled, his condition had deteriorated to the point where his rally speeches, once mere buzzword gibberish, had devolved into mostly mumbling and hand gestures. With the convention drawing near, it was becoming increasingly difficult to mask his slide into oblivion. Many of his supporters silently hoped he would be found guilty and removed from the political stage, putting an end to the farce. Empty eyes. Chapter 1. The former president's handlers and supporters were in a state of constant turmoil. As their candidates' mental faculties continued to deteriorate, they found themselves facing a seemingly insurmountable challenge, keeping the campaign afloat and the truth hidden from the public. Each day brought new bizarre ramblings and incoherent tangents that threatened to expose his decline. The campaign team had set up a makeshift war room in a hotel near the convention center. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Advisors huddled around tables strewn with coffee cups, hastily scribbled notes, and stacks of polling data. Screens displayed live feeds from various media outlets, each one a potential source of a new crisis. "We need to keep him off the podium as much as possible," one advisor said, rubbing his temples. "We can't afford another rant about low-flow toilets and bathroom faucets." "Or his admiration for fictional serial killers and Al Capone," another added, her voice tinged with desperation. Despite their efforts, the former president's speeches had become increasingly erratic. At a recent rally, he had gone off script, praising Hannibal Lecter and lamenting the efficiency of modern plumbing. The crowd had stared in stunned silence, while his handlers exchanged panicked glances. Behind the scenes, the situation was even more dire. The former president's family members, who had once been his staunchest defenders, were now grappling with the reality of his condition. They privately debated whether to intervene and pull him from the race, but the political stakes were too high, and the family name too entrenched in the campaign's success. To mitigate the damage, the campaign team began scripting every public appearance down to the second. They limited his interactions with the press and relied heavily on pre-recorded messages and carefully edited videos. In private, they coached him tirelessly, hoping to salvage some semblance of coherence. As the convention approached, the pressure intensified. A key advisor, known for his crisis management skills, was brought in to oversee the operation. He suggested a bold move, a carefully staged interview with a friendly journalist, where the former president could showcase his strengths and avoid any controversial topics. The day of the interview arrived, and the team held their breath. The journalist, handpicked for her sympathetic approach, lobbed softball questions designed to highlight the former president's past achievements. For a moment, it seemed like the plan might work. But then, the former president veered off script. His eyes glazed over as he launched into a disjointed monologue about his favorite episodes of a crime drama series and how much he admired the cunning of fictional mobsters. The team watched in horror as the interview spiraled out of control. In the aftermath, the handlers scrambled to control the fallout. They issued carefully worded statements, blaming the media for taking his words out of context. Supporters were mobilized to flood social media with positive messages, trying to drown out the criticism. Despite their best efforts, cracks were beginning to show. Whispers of his declining mental state grew louder, even among his most loyal followers. The campaign trail, once a path to victory, now felt like a minefield of potential disasters. As the convention drew to a close, the former president's handlers knew they were running out of time. They could only hope that the momentum they had built would carry them through, even as their candidate's mind continued to unravel. In the end, they were left clinging to the hope that the illusion they had so carefully crafted would hold just a little longer, shielding the public from the harsh reality that their leader was no longer fit to lead. Chapter 2. The fervor among the former president's followers had reached a fever pitch. Their devotion bordered on the fanatical, creating a cult-like atmosphere that defied rational analysis. They gathered in droves at rallies, chanting his name, waving banners, and wearing his likeness on their clothing. For them, it wasn't about the details of the campaign or the intricacies of policy. It was about the figurehead, the symbol of their resistance against a world they felt was slipping away from them. Inside the campaign headquarters, the handlers watched the spectacle with a mix of awe and trepidation. Despite the former president's increasing incoherence and erratic behavior, his supporters seemed more loyal than ever. They turned a blind eye to his nonsensical rants, his bizarre fixations on low-flow toilets, and his admiration for fictional serial killers. None of it mattered to them. They were driven by a singular desire: to win. "They don't care about the substance," one campaign strategist remarked, staring out at the sea of adoring faces from a window above the rally stage. "They just want someone who makes them feel safe, someone who can protect them from the changes they fear." In small towns and rural areas, the former president was hailed as a hero. His supporters saw him as a bulwark against the forces of globalization, immigration, and cultural shifts they couldn't understand or accept. They clung to his promises of returning to a bygone era, a simpler time when they felt their values and way of life were secure. At a rally in the heartland, the atmosphere was electric. Thousands of supporters had gathered, braving the sweltering heat to catch a glimpse of their idol. As he took the stage, the crowd erupted in cheers, their enthusiasm drowning out the faint murmurs of concern among the more observant. He began his speech, sticking to the script at first, but soon his thoughts meandered. He spoke of his achievements, his battles against the deep state, and his plans for the future. Then, as if compelled by some unseen force, he shifted into a rambling tirade about water pressure in modern faucets and how he missed the days when a single flush could clear a toilet. The crowd cheered, oblivious to the absurdity. To them, his words were gospel, a testament to his authenticity and relatability. They laughed at his jokes, no matter how nonsensical, and chanted slogans of defiance and loyalty. Backstage, the campaign team was in a state of constant crisis management. They knew that the support was not rooted in rational discourse, but in a deep-seated need for identity and belonging. They crafted messages that played to these emotions, emphasizing themes of patriotism, strength, and resistance to change. One handler, a young woman new to the campaign, struggled with the ethical implications. "How can they not see?" she asked a seasoned advisor. "He's not well. How can they believe in him so blindly?" The advisor sighed, having seen it all before. "It's not about him," he explained. "It's about them. They see him as their champion, their voice. He represents their fears, their anger, and their hope. As long as he embodies those things, they'll follow him anywhere." The convention arrived, a spectacle of pageantry and zeal. The former president's speech was the highlight, broadcast live to millions. The handlers had worked tirelessly to script every word, but as he took the stage, they held their breath. His eyes, once sharp with cunning, now seemed vacant, yet filled with a manic energy. He began with practiced rhetoric, but soon veered into a bizarre monologue about his favorite crime dramas and admiration for notorious gangsters. The crowd roared in approval, their cheers masking the horror on the faces of those who truly understood his condition. Despite the chaos behind the scenes, the campaign surged forward, propelled by the unwavering devotion of his followers. They ignored the scandals, the gaffes, and the clear signs of his decline. All that mattered was the promise he represented, a return to a world they understood, where they felt powerful and heard. In the end, the handlers knew that they were riding a wave of emotion and fear, a tide that could not be easily turned. They continued to stage manage his appearances, praying that the illusion would hold just long enough to cross the finish line. For the former president's supporters, victory was not just about winning an election. It was about reclaiming their sense of identity and control in a rapidly changing world. And for that, they would follow him into oblivion. Chapter 3. After the convention was over, the aftermath was palpable. The grand event, meant to solidify the former president's standing and invigorate his base, had instead laid bare the stark reality of his condition. His speech had been a rambling disaster, veering into incoherent tangents about plumbing and fictional gangsters. The media's critique was scathing, and even his most ardent supporters were forced to confront the unsettling truth. Within the campaign headquarters, the mood was one of desperation and disarray. Advisors and family members gathered in a tense meeting, their faces etched with worry. The candidate himself, oblivious to the gravity of the situation, still believed he had delivered a rousing address. "We can't keep pretending everything's fine," one senior advisor said, breaking the heavy silence. "The convention was a disaster. Everyone can see he's unfit." "But what choice do we have?" another interjected. "The supporters are terrified of change. They don't know what to do without him." The campaign team was paralyzed, unable to devise a strategy that could salvage the situation. As the days passed, panic spread. The former president's supporters, while still loyal, were increasingly confused and anxious. They had placed all their hopes in a leader who was now clearly incapable of guiding them. Just when it seemed there was no way out, an unexpected development occurred. The Russian intelligence community, long suspected of meddling in foreign affairs, saw an opportunity. They had been monitoring the campaign closely, waiting for a moment of vulnerability. Now, with the candidate's decline evident and his team in disarray, they decided to act. Under the guise of an independent political consulting firm, the Russians approached the campaign with an offer of help. They proposed a sophisticated disinformation campaign to divert attention from the candidate's mental decline and refocus the narrative on his strengths and past achievements. The offer included media manipulation, fake endorsements, and targeted social media strategies to sow confusion and bolster his image. Desperate and with few options left, the campaign leadership decided to accept the offer. They rationalized it as a necessary evil to save their candidate and their movement. The Russians moved swiftly, deploying a network of operatives and cyber experts. They flooded social media with carefully crafted messages, highlighting old speeches and accomplishments. They manipulated search algorithms to bury negative coverage and promote positive stories. Fake accounts posed as supporters, spreading conspiracy theories that painted any criticism of the former president as part of a larger plot against him. Simultaneously, they launched attacks on his opponents, fabricating scandals and exploiting existing divisions within the opposition. The airwaves were soon filled with confusion and controversy, drowning out the clear evidence of the candidate's decline. For a while, the strategy seemed to work. The former president's supporters, already inclined to distrust the media, embraced the new narrative. They rallied around him with renewed vigor, convinced that the negative coverage was nothing more than a smear campaign orchestrated by his enemies. However, within the inner circle, the reality remained grim. The candidate's condition continued to deteriorate, and no amount of media manipulation could change that. Behind closed doors, his advisors struggled to keep him coherent, scripting every word and limiting his public appearances to tightly controlled environments. As the election approached, the strain began to show. The constant deception weighed heavily on the campaign team, who lived in fear of the truth emerging. The Russians, ever opportunistic, kept exerting pressure, reminding them of the precarious alliance and the consequences of failure. In the end, the campaign was a battle on two fronts, maintaining the facade for the public while managing the candidate's increasingly erratic behavior. The former president, still unaware of the full extent of his decline, continued to believe in his own invincibility, buoyed by the illusion of support crafted by his handlers and their clandestine allies. The election became a surreal spectacle, a theater of deception where reality and fabrication blurred. And as the votes were cast and the nation held its breath, the fate of a once great leader and his fervent followers hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of oblivion.
In the twilight of a nation where the shadows start to fall, a leader stands before us, his voice a hollow call. Once a beacon, now a flicker, eyes a vacant stare. We ignore the signs around us, bound by love and fear. We march into oblivion, blind to all the signs. In the cult of our devotion, we leave reason far behind. For a world that we remember, a past we hold so dear. We follow him through madness, into oblivion we steer. At rallies we are gathered, chants of loyalty and pride. He speaks of low-flow toilets, lost in his own mind. Praises to the gangsters from stories that he reads, but we see a protector to answer all our needs. We march into oblivion, blind to all the signs. In the cult of our devotion, we leave reason far behind. For a world that we remember, a past we hold so dear. We follow him through madness, to oblivion we steer. Say he's losing sanity, slipping day by day, but we stand by our champion, come what may. A changing world surrounds us, we're lost in its embrace. In his decline we find our strength, our fears we can replace. We march into oblivion, blind to all the signs. In the cult of our devotion, we leave reason far behind. For a world that we remember, a past we hold so dear, we follow him through madness, to oblivion we steer. So here we are united in the dying light's glow, cling to our memories, afraid to let them go. Though his mind may falter, our faith will never bend. In this cult of devotion, we'll follow to the end. To oblivion, we follow to the end. They say he's losing sanity, slipping day by day, but we stand by our champion, come what may. A changing world surrounds us, we're lost in its embrace. In his decline we find our strength, our fears we can replace. We march into oblivion, blind to all